Can't believe I'm doing another live stream. I've been again. I back off, and then it's like a flood. I just start doing a whole bunch more. Welcome as you come in. Today is the 18th, yes, of November 2022. And yeah, I just did that live stream last night, and I got to thinking this morning about all the things that are happening, and we can't cover it all. But I did feel like I needed to come this morning and talk about some events that happened in my history, which most of you know about as far as the general situation. But the things that I said would come to pass because of the evil and the corruption in our society, and who they choose to persecute and prosecute, and who they choose to let go, because that's all their game, that's their people. And I can't get into all the particulars today, and I wouldn't expect you to sit through it, but I wanted to bring it up. The title of this, of course, is Vice. First we endure, then we pity, then embrace. And that's actually taken from a quote by Alexander Pope. And I posted that on the community tab. If you go up above on my channel here and go to community, you'll see that quote. It's not in its entirety, but it's the important part. And that's very true. That's where we are right now. The war, as I've said, against the man-woman relationship has really been the first war that was fought and has continued through the ages, through the millennia. And here we are today. And I thought maybe I should come on just real quick this morning and cover what's happened. I think most of you know I mentioned it last night to begin with, that there is and I probably ought to be careful how I say this, but I don't know how, because I think it's going to actually be something similar. Anyway, the Senate is now, there is a bill that's going through to codify unusual marriage relationships. Let me just put it that way. Some people would say, well, I had that situation, but this is different. And I'm not going to say why specifically, not here today. But I did notice that Mike Lee, the senator from Utah, not Mitt Romney, of course. Mitt Romney's a rhino for sure. But Mike Lee, he went in and he was arguing in the Senate that, okay, and this is him talking, I don't have a problem with, codifying this same-sex marriage thing. My problem is that I don't want it to be used to come after people that, and churches and organizations that promote the regular type of traditional marriage. And Mike Lee is really pissing up a rope. Okay, that's what he's doing. His church is already abrogated, the Mormon Church. The Mormon Church is more concerned about its tax-exempt status and worshiping its God in Washington, D.C., because that is its God. And I know Mormons don't want to hear that, but it's prima facie, it's manifest. All you got to do is see it. And they're going to bow to this, which means, of course, that Mike Lee is trying to make the case, probably for his Mormon people in Utah, but he knows the church is going to bend completely. There will be those types of marriages conducted even in their most sacred edifice, the temple, before too long. And yet the Mormon people will just go, oh, God's opened his heart and his mind now. He's changed again. I warned about this several decades ago, and most of you know my history. If you don't, all you gotta do is Google it, and I think it's kind of down on the list now, but you can find it. And I think most of you know I don't do that anymore for a lot of reasons. The persecution was so intense. The people that push same-sex marriage have never gone through the persecution that my family and I went through, and those like me. Never. Never. All right, let me say a couple of other things real quick before I get into that, because I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I did want to mention these. The FBI and the DOJ are now admitting that there was nothing of significance that came out of the Mar-a-Lago raid. Well, isn't that convenient? So there is supposed to be a DOJ regulation and some other federal guidelines that they don't do those types of things before an election to influence it. Well, they did it anyway. So it's okay to, and I'm not for Trump, you know that. But this again shows the corruption in the FBI and the DOJ, which I've been calling out for a very, very long time. Matter of fact, in the playlists, I have an entire, and it's not complete. There's some I haven't put in there, but there's an entire playlist on FBI corruption, which would include the DOJ. So, in effect, our government is meddling in our choices. And if this had happened in any third world country, we'd be invading it right now. Director Wray, he was being confronted just the other day with Senator Josh Hawley about a month ago. He was called in for it's a statutorily dictated oversight hearing, and this little pissant Ray said that he couldn't go through the whole thing because he had to take an important trip. Went and got on his Gulfstream FBI jet. He didn't have an arrangement with a private airline. He didn't have a ticket, a reservation with a private airline he had to keep. This is the FBI, his FBI Gulfstream jet, and he said it was an important thing. So he left this statutory required meeting early for a vacation. And Hawley and others found out about it. I think Chuck Grassley did, and they called him out on the carpet. And his excuse was, well, we had other meetings that were coming up. The guy's a liar, and you can see how they manipulate their words to try to get out of things. Or the fact of the matter is, they're proving that they are the fourth branch of government, and they're very dangerous, just as I've said the entire time. The intelligence community, and that includes the FBI, is our most dangerous domestic enemy. They're criminals. They're a criminal syndicate. And nobody's willing to take them on, not really. And I warned about this for a long time. So here we go with this Mar-a-Lago raid that was used to meddle in our choices. I'm using some different words here. And we have this thing with Director A saying, well, yeah, I went on vacations. Do something about it. All right? Oh, he kind of jumped around his words a little bit. He hemmed and hawed, but hummed and hawed. I don't know which, whatever. But he knows they're not going to touch him. And then, of course, we have all the covering up of the exculpatory evidence on the January 6th information. The exculpatory information, they just are evil. Like I've said, for a very long time. Let me jump now to this situation with the bill before the Senate that's being finalized, I guess, right now. They're doing their arguments. Like I said, Mike Lee's in there, pretending like he's protecting the Mormon Church's interest in one man, one woman marriage, which is laughable considering that what they've done in the last few years, but especially now. The church came out, as somebody mentioned. I didn't know this, by the way. It was off my radar because I've been doing some other things. And on the live stream last night, somebody mentioned, hey, Mormon churches said they support this bill. And which didn't surprise me at all. As I said last night, my friends and I have long said that they're going to get there officially at some point in time. They've already kind of bent to that. But now to have it official, they can use that as cover. Oh, the federal government spoke, and it's our God. We're going to bow down to it, and we're going to do what they say. Not really because we disagree with them, because we actually don't. We really do want to take down the real man-woman relationship. We really are after that. And I could go into a history as to why, despite what they say publicly. But at any rate, that, and of course, they gotta keep their tax-free, tax-exempt status. They've got to do that. So they are going to bend the knee to Baal, to Moloch. They really already have, and I could go over that history. But here we are. This will be something that every Mormon can see, that those people up there, those men that claim to be speaking for God, are liars and deceivers, just like so many other of the Christian churches, as Chuck Baldwin has pointed out, Michael Heiser to a lesser degree, David Knight, who he's not a preacher, but he sure can give a sermon. And by the way, I didn't come on this morning because I don't like to walk over David Knight. Alex Jones I don't care about. So I know it's Alex Jones' time. So anyway, Mormon Church is in the process of bowing to its god, Baal, and Moloch, the federal government, to keep its tax exempt status and to show that it's a good little church. It's doing its job and keeping its members in line, going down this not a roller coaster, this descent into hell that is happening in Western culture, Western societies. Interestingly, and I don't care if I offend women right now, okay? I don't care. I don't care because, as I said last night, you're denying your calling. Oh, I don't like the way I'm treated as a woman. Well, do what you're supposed to do. I told you, you're supposed to be the nurturers. You're supposed to keep the danger that the male of the species exhibits in line, and you do that by being the woman that you're supposed to be. Nurturing, caring, and affectionate. I know there are men out there that abuse you. I know there are men out there who do things and you feel betrayed. But then you turn around and you do it to somebody else. The very thing you complain about, you do to somebody else. Some man somewhere. I have a friend who dates quite a bit. He's an older guy. He's not as old as I am. But he dates quite a bit. And, he finds this. It's rampant in the community. I'm not saying that there aren't problems with men. I told you about a daughter of mine that is just having a heck of a time because the guys are just, and they're the younger generation primarily, they just don't get it. So I feel bad for her. But at the same time, she thinks it's got to be all about her. And I've talked to her about that. And this is my daughter. I see the same thing to some extent. So this friend of mine who dates, he says, "Hey Roy, I got to tell you, this is the way it is. All these women are jaded. They've been told for so long that they deserve this and they deserve that, and they want their cake and eat it too." He says, "It's a problem." And Jordan Peterson came out some time ago and said, "Oh, hey gentlemen, if you're having trouble finding a woman, it's because, you got to dress better, you got to get a better job, get a better education, whatever." He's been out of the loop for a while or something. He doesn't know what's happened. Now, you ladies aren't going to like me coming down on you like this. But the mother in the home is the bedrock of civilization. And I'm going to show you, I don't think I'll read it out of this book that I did. I've actually written 3 books, and I'm going to show you those. You know about 2 of them. I'm going to show you a 3rd one. But at any rate, so we have the major churches bowing down to this thing. And then we have people like Pastor John MacArthur, who was giving a sermon on this very issue, on the importance of women and how they're supposed to be good wives and mothers and be the nurturing side of mankind, and how that's been subverted by the evil ones. Dangling, go out there and work in the workforce, go out there and do that. I know there's survival issues, okay, I know that. But it's gone beyond that now. So John MacArthur was giving a sermon on it, and women got up, I guess some men did too, I'm not sure about that, but they got up and walked out because of what he was saying. The people have chosen degradation and death. It's just amazing to me. Chuck Baldwin has talked about this as well, and to a lesser extent, Michael Heiser. All those guys I have a lot of respect for. But these good pastors are few and far between. There's some others out there, like the ones that were standing up against all those restrictions and demands and mandates over the last couple of years, but they were not the Mormon Church. The Mormon Church told its people to go and get the data upgrade. Told them to do it, and most of them did. All right. I'm opening myself up here again, and I know it. But I've done it to some extent before, so I might as well just go all the way. Most of you know, or you should know, I've talked about it before. As a matter of fact, I even made a playlist about my history, about my life. And you know that I involved myself for reasons I cannot fully explain here. It would take too long. Somebody asked about why I have the beliefs I do, and I said, wow, you don't come out, you don't end up there in a conversation on a live stream. It's years and years of experience, study, and things that happen to you. So I can't give you the entire background, and I'm not even going to try. But I got involved in what's called patriarchal plural marriage back in the 80s. And by the way, no juveniles, okay? It was all grown women, all of them. Most of them, except for my first wife, who I married legally, civilly, so to speak. The other women came to me. I didn't go after them. It was because of what I stood for, and in those days they thought it was the right thing. Now, because of the persecutions and a lot of other things that happened, that family got torn apart. Because of the persecutions I'm talking about, okay? So that's why I say these people that want these protections for their decrepit lifestyle have no idea what kind of persecutions were going on to people that were trying to do the biblical marriage things. And I know there are Christians that say, no, it's one man, one woman relationship. That's fine. That's great. But as I pointed out in many of my videos, they really don't understand that scripture in Timothy is saying a bishop must be the husband of one wife. It doesn't mean that. All it means is he has to be married. That's what it means. But even if I give them that he can only have one wife, that's not how Israel worked. Okay, I don't care whether you like the idea or not. Okay, but if you believe in the Bible in any way, shape, or form, or even some of the other religions around the world, for instance, Islam, you try to come down on that type of marriage relationship, you really don't understand. And I warned back in the 80s when this was done to me by the church that should have supported me in my position, even if they didn't want to institute it themselves, but they didn't. They warred against me. And I talked about that. I even talked to one of the general authorities and taped him about their admitting what they did to me and my family. But the point is that now we're seeing exactly what I predicted would happen. I said, if you reject this, as God even told Samuel, and Samuel said, they want this king guy, they're just not listening to me. And God said to him, and I quoted it before, it's in Samuel, the book of Samuel, God says to Samuel, hey, they have not rejected you, Samuel, they've rejected me. And I said the same thing, basically, back when all this happened. I said, you throw me under the bus on this thing, and you allow all these degraded, immoral things going on, and you come after me for trying to have a family, extended, true, but if you do this, you're going to have a day when you are all in the depths of hell, doing the things that only demons do. And here we are. Now, I'm being kind of circumspect here. I don't need to get thrown off. I'm trying to get a sermon done. So I made that prediction. Now let me give you some other information. You all know about this book, at least you should. Again, in the playlist I talk about it, and I've talked about it on other things. So I wrote this one. This one I published in 1996. It is out of print, but they are reprinting it now. The publisher is reprinting it now, and I told you that it's probably going to be sometime around Christmas when they get it done, but you can't hold me to that. All I'll tell you is when it's finally ready to be distributed, I'll come on, I'll let you know. I've already given the publisher information. I'm not going to give it today. I'm going to wait until he tells me, yeah, it's all ready. Go ahead and make the announcement. And then if you want this, you'll be able to get it and read it. And that, for those people who want to say, well, why do you believe the way you do? This is a good way to find out. Okay? So I did that in 96. But in 1986, which was 3 years after I was fired from the Murray Police Department for my relationships, even though they didn't go after other officers who had girlfriends, who they didn't take care of these girlfriends. These officers were married. They had their own girlfriends, and nobody gave them a problem. As a matter of fact, there was one officer that was caught banging the lieutenant's secretary on duty, and they didn't fire him. They just transferred him into patrol. But me, the church got involved. and said, no, we can't have him doing this. As a matter of fact, now they're pushing this new bill going through the Senate. But when people were trying to say, hey, let Roy alone, let him have his own life. Oh, no, no, no. We're gonna prosecute him. They never actually did because they knew I'd fight it. But they did persecute me. It caused a lot of trouble, got me fired, had me go through all kinds of things of losing homes and jobs and all sorts of things. All right. But I kept going. Only the Army came by. There was a story about me in the Army Times. This was in '87. And I had basically what occurred is the military police branch at ARPAS in the Army Personnel Center, there's a lieutenant colonel there who saw the article, and I guess everybody in the office, and they got a hold of me and pulled me back on active duty saying, if Utah's not going to give you a badge and a gun, we will. So the Army actually treated me well, even though I was very concerned about what we were doing around the world at the time, and I did go back in. I did. They never caused me any trouble over it. Oh, there were individuals and organizations that caused me quite a bit of difficulty in there, prevented me from getting career jobs that I wanted and stuff like that. But that's going to take too long to explain. I'll just verify that it happened. But in 1986, I decided to write a book. So I wrote this one in 96. This one I wrote in 86. And basically what it is a short compendium. My contribution here is only 54 pages, and then the rest of it is the Supreme Court decision after I went and was asking for a writ of certiorari because I had lost my case at the district court level. I'm sorry, it's the 10th Circuit. In the appendix, it's the 10th Circuit. And let's see, I think I do have the... Anyway, so it's basically a legal compendium. And I want to show you a couple of things that I said in here. And I'll just verify some of this, all right? I ran for sheriff that same year, okay? There's an article there. I ran as a libertarian for sheriff. So those people who say, why don't you run for office, Roy, and try to make changes? I did. In my book here, I do some things, and I show some. Okay, look at this. All right. Why aren't they commanding or recommending action against these degraded and immoral unions? No, they're supporting it. Let me show you this one. Okay. And when these things came out, I said, as I mentioned earlier, that if the society is going to accept this and reject the marriage of the patriarchs like Abraham, Jacob, Israel, Gideon wasn't a patriarch, but that still it fits, King David, Solomon, etc. Yeah, you can overdo it. As a matter of fact, David and Solomon actually did it wrong because it says that when you take a wife, the food, raiment, and duty of marriage of the first wife cannot be diminished. Well, I don't think old David could take care of 300 wives and 700 concubines in one day. That's ridiculous. He may have kept them in food and raiment, but the duty of marriage thing, nope. So they went too far. And in Islam, you can only have up to 4. I mean, it can only take up to 4. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's degrading to women. Really? What's happened in the United States over the last little while? All these women rights things. And now you're having to sit there and agree to compete with men in women's sports. Really? Oh, where's the concern about women's rights? It's all a lie. It's about destroying mankind. So I don't care how you feel about what I chose, but those women came along willingly, and in most cases, they came looking for me. And all the other women understood that. So as it stands right now, my prediction that I made in this book, and I was trying to find the the quote from here, but I didn't actually read the whole thing. But in here, in this book, I predict that the society is going to go down the drain, and they are going to accept the very thing that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed for. And no, it's the thing in Sodom and Gomorrah had nothing to do with man-woman relationships. Okay, a lot of people think that that was included in that. No, it was not, because there are, and I've talked about these in the past. There are rules for men and women, a man-woman relationship in the Bible that have nothing to do with marriage, but responsibility. And I've hinted at it some other things too, like I did last night and several other times about Eve, that after the fall she was subject to her husband's desire and rule. Well, what was it like before that? The Christians have destroyed their own foundation because of their prudish stupidity and the lies of those who have tried to control them for the last 2,000 years. And I like Christianity better than anything else, but in that regard and some others, they have really destroyed themselves, and they only have themselves to blame for where we are right now. Mormon Church is a good example. Okay, the third book I wrote, of course, was this one. You all know about that. It's out of print as well. All these books are out of print. Like I said, this one they're in the process of reprinting right now. I hope it'll be done here in the next month or so. This one's not no longer in print. The reason why it's not is because Amazon tried to screw me over and I didn't want to deal with them anymore, okay? Because nobody liked this book being out there. When I wrote this book, a movie company approached me and said they wanted to do a movie about it. It was an Italian producer, very well known, I might add. And he said, yeah, we like it. We want to do a movie. And I thought, wow, that's cool. And then they gave me the ultimatum. We won't do this as a movie if you don't make Mary Magdalene a transgender, cross-dresser man. And I refused to do it. That's where this thing is going. Degrade the man-woman relationship and accept all these other immoral, degraded, demented. So you cursed me, Mormon Church. You cursed me, state of Utah. You persecuted me. You broke up my family. You kept me from making a living. And I told you, you're going to go down into Sodom and Gomorrah. And here we are. And Mike Lee is out there not standing up against this stupidity, which is going to further destroy the country and the world. What happened to Sodom and Gomorrah is going to look like a picnic. And Russia's going to do it, as I've said. Yeah, they are. Maybe China too. So, I don't care how you feel about all that. I really don't. And I'm not going to take questions on here. I don't have the battery time to do it. Sorry. I would love to, but I really can't, ladies and gentlemen. I know most of you are you may not agree with my points, with how I organized my life, but at least you didn't cause me any trouble. You understand that was something I did because of my understanding of biblical scripture and other writings as well, and cultures. Not saying you have to do it yourself. As a matter of fact, I don't promote that lifestyle at all. It's, if you want to go through hell, do that. Especially you guys. It's actually a lot easier on the women than it is on the men, if it's done right. It really is. But at any rate, so would I do it again? No. I mean, it would take a revelation from God, and I mean, He'd have to come down and stand right in front of me and say, Roy, you got to do it, because I wouldn't do it again. No, I really appreciate being one-on-one. I really appreciate being one-on-one. I'm not saying the other is impossible, but it's definitely more difficult. But, being one-on-one is really my preference at this point. I did my duty. I did my time. I followed through with my promises. And I had lots of kids, as most of you know. Remember I said the blessing of God isn't filthy lucre of the dollar, right? It's the fruit of the earth that you grow yourself. It's the air you breathe, the water you drink, and it's the children that he gives you to put in your quiver. Happy is the man who has a quiver full of them. And I do. Okay, so that's its reward, despite all the persecutions and all the other stuff. I remember, like I said that this whole thing was going to happen, where this Western society goes down into this cesspool, and yet they were saying I was bad. In this book right here, let me see if I can find the quote, because the courts were really interesting about what they said. And it's funny how it's changed in just a few decades. Let me see if I can find this here. I'm sorry, I didn't mark this, so it's going to take me just a minute to find it. Okay, here it is. So the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals did two things. So I went to the district court level. By the way, there was another case just like mine it was called Briggs versus Muskegon, Michigan Police Department. And his case was exactly like mine in every way, with one exception. I had the additional argument of the First Amendment religious freedom, which he didn't use. Guess what? The court sent him back to work with full back pay, but not me, because they wanted to control my mind, and they even said so. So I basically, because of that opinion in Michigan, we appealed, and on some other grounds, and it went to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, and they said two things I thought you might find interesting. The first is, here's this tribunal sitting up in front of me, and they openly stated, we don't like Mormons, so we're not going to rule in his favor. I wasn't even a Mormon at the time. They had excommunicated me several years before. But this is what they said. Listen to this. Okay? Listen to this. Monogamy is this is the court stating this. Monogamy is inextricably woven into the fabric of our society. It is the bedrock upon which our culture is built. You think they'd make that statement today with what's going on in this country? Drag queen story time, transgenderism. I'm saying things that can get me in trouble here. Mutilations, and now this stuff that's going on in the Senate and in the Mormon Church, and probably lots of others. No, you can't get this. I'm not going to have it reprinted, and if you find a copy of it, it's probably going to cost you a lot of money. Even though I think at the time I sold it for $3, something like that. But the few that I've seen on eBay and other places, they're pretty expensive, and they're not in really good shape. Because they're old. I mean, this thing was published in 1986, and it's a paperback. Here's a picture of me. I got to show you this. I was running for sheriff. This is one of the pictures we used for when I was running for sheriff. The other one that I was using when I was running for sheriff was this one that's on the front of this book. I had Democrats tell me, "Oh, Roy, we would have voted for you if you were Democrat, even with your background." It's all about power and control and money, just like the situation in Ukraine. The lies of Zelensky and the lies of the United States and the European Union, etc., etc. They're at war with you, ladies and gentlemen, and you've picked the wrong enemy when you come after me. When you come after my choices and the reason why I did it, and you don't know all the reasons, but they were seriously considered and seriously counseled. When I was sitting in the police officer, or the police administration administrative hearing that I was called into, I pointed out that almost everybody in that room had a girlfriend on the side, and I knew it, and I could name them, except for the chief of police. He was a stake president or bishop at the time. He was really a pitiful kind of man, very timid. It was the church that convinced him to take action against me. But at any rate, So I pointed out all this and I said, how come you're not going after them? And they said, we're not here to talk about that. Well, that's a nice thing. It's sort of like Ray's thing. We can't, and the FBI's thing, we can't talk about ongoing investigations or potential ongoing investigations, which is bullshit, of course, as I said. I made that point, and basically I was told this by the administrative, and I have police officer friends that know about this, okay? I wish I could get them on, but for reasons that I understand, they don't want to come on to my program and talk about what they saw happen. But at any rate, then I was told if these had just been girlfriends and that I did not consider them wives, I was not legally married to anyone but my first wife. All the others we had what would be considered solemn covenants between ourselves. So I wasn't even really married, but the way that the law was interpreted in Utah at the time, they come after what you're thinking, not what you do. So they were trying to control my religious convictions, prima facie. So they said, if these had just been girlfriends, it would have been okay. I would have had a slap on the wrist, and it would have all been forgotten. Now, all these institutions actively seek out people who want the same sex relationship. Well, that's fine, but don't you see the hypocrisy here? I can prove, if you believe in the Bible and you're going to use that as your basis, I can prove from the basis of those scriptures, even though in the New Testament you don't see it, it's actually there. Jesus was descended from, they claim, from David, one of the most celebrated polygamists of all time. And Solomon, another one. All the way back to Jacob, Israel, and his 4 wives. 2 wives and 2 concubines. Going on back to Abraham, Sarah, Hagar, Keturah, and his many tents. And then as I've talked about in my religious discussions, everybody thinks that the Eve and Adam thing was one man, one woman, and I've told you that the name Hava indicates that there were 2 women, minimum, and with Lilith it's 3. You don't have to believe any of that, but that's the way the early sages understood it and talked about it. But it's not pushed because you don't talk about those things with children. And those scriptures were written for people who were still children in their minds. It was the awakening of the consciousness at that time. I'm done. I just wanted to call out the Mormon Church, you Mormons, that you think these people are commanded and directed by God himself, or any of these pastors that are accepting anything that this federal government pushes down your throats. You need to reject those leaders and those pastors and those preachers. They're not morons. They're evil. They worship Baal and Moloch and the federal government, which is the same thing. They worry more about keeping their tax-exempt status than they do teaching the truth, morality, and spiritual strength. Oh, they talk a good line until it comes down to a situation like this, or some war that the government wants to fight, to steal people's property and to launder money and to kill by millions. Oh, that's okay. God's going to forgive you for fighting in that war because soldiers, they're not responsible for what their government does. Hogwash bullshit. And I've explained that before. Am I hot under the collar? Yeah, because Mike Lee, he goes and the church go to support this Sodom and Gomorrah crap. And they threw me and my family and those like me under the bus. Even threw men in prison in the 40s and 50s. Broke up families. Had them starve. Oh, but now we're so worried about these other, and I'll just say, immoral things going on. Well, they're okay because we've said so, because we love Baal and Moloch. I don't have any grief against people that are inclined to these types of lifestyles, okay? They're misguided and they're missing out on what's really important. I know there are 2 women that I know that are together. Both very nice. I can actually say I love them to pieces. And I talked to one of them. As a matter of fact, she asked for a copy of my book, this one here, and I gave her a copy of it. Probably shocked her a little bit, but they already knew. They've known about me for a long time. But, I told her, I said, look, frankly, I think you're great people, but the problem is that you're really condemning yourself. When you get old, you could go out and adopt, but I don't think that's right. Children need to have both genders and the parents, but boy, those things are going back and forth. A lot of women, like in John MacArthur's, sermon, got up and walked out. I don't give a damn. Okay, you're only proving who you are when you do that. But these two women, I said, look, you're condemning yourself. When you get older, who's going to take care of you? What joy are you going to have? You're not going to have posterity. Oh, you're going to adopt some kids? Yeah, really? And you're not fulfilling your nurturing side of as being a woman. Oh, but that's all cultural, whatever they call it. No, that's what we are. That's what we were created to be. And they're trying to destroy that, and I've said it, and I've repeated myself too many times. So there we are. I've given you a little rundown on a lot of different things this morning, showing you again the FBI and the DOJ are criminal and corrupt as hell. No, I don't trust Trump, but what they did at the Mar-a-Lago thing, I think they were making him look like a victim again as part of the Isaiah 52, 53 character that I think he's trying to portray. But regardless, it shows you. And then Ray's little trip on the Gulfstream jet, getting out of the statutory hearing, making an excuse that really he should be held in contempt of Congress for. Of course, that'll never happen. People that run this government and most of the churches and ecclesiastical authorities are evil. They're evil. I could tell you things, you Mormons. Yeah, I'm really hitting on the Mormon church right now. I could tell you things about the Mormon church that I know about firsthand. And the things that they've done. And you'd stick your finger down your throat and vomit. And you think they're God's prophets. Some of them should have been arrested. I'll give you one example. I'm not going to go into the really bad stuff I know, but I'll give you an example. In the 1980s, there was a guy by the name of Mark Hoffman, Mormons. Look it up. The Salamander Letter. Mark Hoffman was a document forger. And he pretended to find old church documents so that the church could put them in their archives, their historical archives. Well, one of the things that they were wondering about was a thing called the Salamander Letter. And what this Salamander Letter was an admission by Joseph Smith that his first vision was about seeing a salamander that basically talked to him and gave him the information. And that's not what really happened, okay? This was all fomented over time. But anyway, the point is the church was concerned about that. They didn't want that running around loose out there. It might ruin their storyline. So Mark Hoffman, who was a document forger, forged the Salamander Letter and took it to one of the general authorities. I'll just tell you who it was. It was Gordon B. Hinckley. Gave it to Gordon B. Hinckley, who then bought it from him because he thought it was real. Well, I thought a prophet, a prophet of God would be able to know that they're being shook down, Oh no. Gordon B. Hinckley got it, and he paid Mark Hoffman for it. Well, Mark Hoffman got money. He did this with a lot of forged documents. And so what he did was, and by the way, I was right there seeing all this. I had friends that these things revolved around, okay? So Mark Hoffman, he continued to do that. And then some people started to ask questions. Oh, not Gordon B. Hinckley, not the church, but some members of the church started asking questions. Mark Hoffman was afraid that he'd get found out. So guess what he did? He started making bombs. And he sent bombs to 2 people. One of them were killed. this man's wife was killed. She opened it up. It was supposed to be the guy, but she opened it up. It killed him. It killed her. They didn't know who the bomber was. Well, Mark Hoffman was after somebody else. I don't remember who it was, but he was basically triggering the bomb. He was sitting in his car in Salt Lake City, triggering the bomb so he could deliver it, and it went off in his car, injuring him. That's when they found out what he did. So the detectives did all this background work, right? And they knew that a lot of it led to people high up in the church who would know about what happened. So they went in to talk to Gordon B. Hinckley. And he refused to cooperate with them. I knew some of the police officers that were involved in this. Because Gordon B. Hinckley knew that if he really talked about what had happened, that it would lower his esteem amongst the members of the church. The funny thing is that the state attorney general and the county attorney and the people that controlled those police detectives told them to back off because of who became part of the investigation, Gordon B. Hinckley. That's one example. And I could tell you others that would literally make you sick to your stomach. I've been around this for a long time. So don't hold me in the derision. Okay? I may have tried to do what Abraham did, Jacob, Israel, David, Gideon, Hosea, but I never butt-effed a guy. Sam Kinison made a good joke about that. You all remember Sam Kinison? He was a comedian back in the 80s. And I got to be careful how I say this because this will definitely get me in trouble. He was talking about this very subject, and you'll have to fill in the blanks, but he's up on the stage. He kind of yelled a lot, and he goes, "You know what I want to know? I want to know how a guy finds love in another guy's hairy blank." I'm definitely not a guy like that. I think I've proven that. And for that, because I hold on to that, despite the Christian idea that it's somehow bad, which it isn't. It was never found in derision. Christ himself said that he was descended from that family lifestyle. Oh, but things changed in the new covenant. No. But that's for another time. That's an argument for another time. Okay, I got to go. I'm sure I've upset some people today. I'll just leave you with this. Women, you better start being women. You better return to your nurturing, caring, affectionate, womanly attributes. Because the fact of the matter is, the survival of mankind depends on you returning to what you were created to be. Not to what this evil government and all these social programs are trying to tell you to be, but what you are manifestly created to be. Even your body testifies what you are supposed to be. And if you deny that, guess what? There's something that happens on the other side. You are no longer going to have root or branch. That means you're going to lose your ancestors and you're going to lose your posterity because you didn't think that was important. And what's worse is that scripture that says, in the world to come they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels in heaven. A lot of people say that means there's no male and female. The point is you will be alone. You'll get what you asked for. You'll have nobody to blame but yourself, because those curses were placed upon the fallen angels and their posterity. And you and men who support this bullshit are all sustaining the program of those fallen angels and that entire culture. That's my warning. I said it in the 1980s, and I'm saying it again today because of what I see Mike Lee doing in the Senate, the Mormon Church, and all of these corrupt, government-loving, as if government's God, pastors and preachers to support this. And the school system doing what they're doing. You all should know what I'm talking about. You see it in front of you. Do not condemn me for following a patriarchal, biblically supported lifestyle. And again, would I do it again? No. I spent my time in hell. There are people that were successful at it, but as Carol said, my last wife, who died of cancer, as most of you know, she said to me one day, she says, Roy, the reason why this happened to you is because you stuck your head up above everybody else and you were proclaiming the truth, and so they had to cut your head off. That's what they do. And that's exactly what happened. So these people that tell me, they're suffering and they've got these difficulties and all that, man, you know nothing. I took on the state of Utah, the Mormon Church, and the United States government. All right? And the things they did to me, you wouldn't believe. But I have proof of it. One of the things I talk about in this book here is when I went to interview a former general authority of the church, and he admitted all the things that they did to me. I took it to the FBI, and the FBI agent said, you know what, this is the best proof of a civil rights violation I've ever seen in my career. And then he said, but I don't think Washington, D.C. is going to let it go forward because we support the Mormon Church. We even have people working for church security. And I said, I know, these are some of the people that have done these things to me. He says, yeah, you're right. So it's not going to go anywhere. And he was right. And I gave him a copy of one of the tapes. I had 2 tapes. And of course, he sent one to D.C., which I never got back. And he asked me before he sent it, I hope you have a copy of this because you probably won't get it back. And I said, yeah, I'm not dumb. And I've still got that tape today. And the transcript of what that tape says is in this book. So you Mormons, I suggest you take a bite of that and chew it real good. Okay? I don't want to ever, I don't even like talking to Mormons anymore. I was talking to one lady here a week or so ago, and she comes back and she says, oh, I got to have a Mormon man in a temple marriage. And I went, wow, that just shows you they don't know anything. And people need to be comforted. They need to have their faith. I understand. I need to be patient with them. But they should be seeing what's going on right now, and they should be absolutely outraged and walking out. And if they don't, they're going to be as guilty as those guys up there who are doing this. They're going to find themselves, because in conferences, when the church has these conferences, both at the stake level and the church level, you're told, oh, we can vote in the church. We've got a voting right. Yeah, sustain who votes to sustain the prophet, seer, and revelator, whatever his name is, this new guy. Raise your hands. Okay, and they'll all raise their hands until they sustain it. You just convicted yourselves. All those opposed, raise your hand, and nobody does. Or if they do, or if they voice their dissent, they're summarily drummed out of the church, or at least disfellowshipped, if not excommunicated. So there's really no voting there. It's all a lie. But you go and you bow your knee to those imposter, impersonator, liars, deceivers, demons up there. Raise your hand to the square and sustain them, and you're going to be as guilty as what they have done and are doing. That goes for all the other churches too. People say, "Well, you sure pick on the Catholics a lot, or Christians for their belief in a ridiculous idea of a virgin birth, meaning that Mary never had sex because of the way the thing has been written." But you see, I'll come down on the Mormons too. I'll come down on anybody who's a hypocrite, a liar, and a deceiver. It's one thing to be mistaken about something. It's another thing to deliberately lead people down into the depths of hell. And I won't do it. And I'll call it out when I see it. All right, I'm done for the day. I am going to have a follow-up video partially on this subject. I'm going to expand on it a little bit. I won't be calling people out like I have here, but I kind of started it last night. I hope some of you who have followed me, I put up a Hebrew word on the board last night, and I said those of you who follow me should at least recognize a portion of what that word is. I'm going to talk about that, and it's going to be a subject that's going to piss off a lot of women. All right? Sorry about that. But I'm going back to the thing where you were created to be something, and if you deny it, then you're going to end up with nothing. Okay? So I'm going to talk about it, even though you don't like it. You're going to say, oh, but that's not right. The women have to endure this. Hey, if you want to lose root and branch, you just keep going down the same road and fighting against these principles. Am I always right? No, but on this I am on firm, absolutely solid ground. Keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground. Things are getting bad. They're going to start all this stuff on the Ebola now again. You know, use that as the new excuse. There are places here that they're starting the process again. They have to keep you locked down and under control. They're going to take your money system. You watching that happen? Look at this FTX thing. I brought it up the other day. How they're laundering that money that's going to Ukraine. And FTX is only one example. And nobody's going to prison. They haven't even been charged or investigated. That's your illustrious FBI that's a criminal syndicate. They're about destroying this nation and, most importantly, this culture, and especially, you say, well, Roy, you don't believe in Christianity. Yes, I do. Just not your kind, probably. Okay? But no, they're out to destroy Christianity. So, a lot of bad things happening. Like I say, you know, keep your situational awareness on high, eyes on the horizon, ears to the ground. Pray, stay out of the way, and that's all I got for the day. I got to go. My battery's probably about dead. Sorry, I can't take questions. I can't say that. I had to open up the window so that the light would work for the video, and I can see that the chat's going by, but I can't read it. So next time, you know, we'll have another Q&A or whatever. Maybe after I talk about that Hebrew word I put up on the board last night, amongst the other topics that are surrounding that, and it has to do with man-woman relationships and how the Bible really looks at those, not the way men have insisted on it with their doctrinal bias and their attempts to control your lives. We'll see you out here.